St. John the Philosopher here with another car video. And I got a question. I got a question for you guys. Where are all the white people? Where are all the white people from television? Particularly in the commercials. I've noticed a pattern. I've noticed a pattern that there aren't any white, in particular, there aren't any white couples anymore. There aren't any happy families of just white people. They're always mixed couples. There's always some interracial group with all their little mixed kids running around in all of these commercials, whether you're selling soap or you're selling a cup of noodles. And granted, look, I understand. There was a point at which this was illegal. There was a point at which it was frowned upon, and it's gained a lot more acceptance these days. And I'm glad about it because I happen to be in an interracial marriage. So I get it. But the thing is, if the goal of a lot of these people is to portray the world a little more realistically, you know, in terms of percentages, in terms of how it is, there aren't that many of us out there that they should be the dominant couple in every dang commercial. So I notice it. I noticed it because it's like if you're a black person living in a white country and you find yourself in a situation where there are a lot more black people than you're used to, you notice it. I'm used to being in a situation in the circles that I roll in, where I'm maybe 10, 20, maybe even 30% of the population. If I roll up on a place and black folks are like 60, 70, 80% of the population, I usually have to ask the question, why? Now, in general, the way we live our lives, the why is pretty easy. When it comes to television, when it comes to something that's produced, when it's come to something where someone deliberately cast something, the question becomes a little more complicated. Take this series, I think it's by the BBC. It's about an older, an ancient period in their history, and it's about one of their queens, one of the British royalty, and it's played by a black lady. Now you have to ask yourselves, why exactly is that happening? Because it doesn't really make all that much sense. So, of course, the answer is that the producers of these things are virtue signaling. Obviously, you want to be able to produce things that can include a wide variety of people playing the various parts. You don't want to be biased in the way that you cast your things, in the way that you consider your characters. You don't want to be, if you have a position of power in Hollywood, you don't want to be the type of person who only wants people who look like you to play all of the parts and be all the things in all the movies. I get it. That's actually very, very important. Representation is actually important. But what we've been seeing lately out of Hollywood is something else entirely. It's virtue signaling on steroids. They want you to know exactly how good they are at being non-biased by being completely biased against white people. And I don't think that's cool. I don't think that's cool at all. It's particularly not cool when we talk about franchises that actually have a history of what characters are supposed to look like, what characters are supposed to be like, where race is an actually important part of that character, or at the very least, if we're talking about going from one visual medium to another, like say comic books being turned into movies, there's a certain way that we all consider a certain character to look. And it's kind of important to us because we feel like those are real people. I grew up with Peter Parker as Spider-Man, and he's always going to be Spider-Man to me. And Spider-Man has a certain look. He's a brown-haired white kid from Brooklyn. If you get somebody else to play Peter Parker who doesn't look like Peter Parker, I'm going to be upset about it. I'm going to feel some kind of way about it. Now, that isn't to say that you can't have your Miles Morales out there. I think it's pretty cool too. But this is the type of thing that I'm talking about. I'm talking about situations like what we've got with, I think the latest example is a cartoon adaptation of the Scooby-Doo franchise. Now, yes, I know, it's silly. Scooby-Doo isn't exactly the biggest franchise in the world. We're not talking about Lord of the Rings here. But look, every little bit, every little step that they take is another straw on the camel's back of those of us who are consuming, or at least want to consume, decent entertainment. So what you end up with this Velma situation is, it's the Scooby-Doo gang, right? You know, Velma, Daphne, Fred, Shaggy, and Scooby. In this Velma series, which is an adaptation of all of that, Velma, a nerdy little white girl, is portrayed as an Indian girl. Daphne, a pretty white girl. That's what she's known for. I'm just using these as a descriptor for them because it's kind of the general category that they fit in the cartoon. Daphne is portrayed as half Asian, I guess, half Chinese, something like that. Shaggy isn't really Shaggy. He's some other name altogether, and he's a black dude. And frankly, kind of an effeminate, simpy kind of black dude, from what I can tell. They're always trying to emasculate black men, I've noticed in media. But that's a whole other discussion. I'm probably going to make a video on that too. And then of course they had to keep Fred, though, as the white guy. They just absolutely emasculated him by making him basically a man boy. A guy who's so underdeveloped that he hasn't gone through puberty and he doesn't know how to cut a steak with a knife and a fork. So it's ridiculous on its face. It's insulting, and more importantly, it shows the character of the people making this stuff. Because if it wasn't that, if it wasn't for the fact that they can use these things as platforms to signal their own virtue, or to make some sort of political point, or to punch back at people they think wrong them as kids, then they wouldn't be doing this at all. But what we want them to do is to entertain us. I said this in my last car video. Why don't they want to entertain us? And I explained that if you want to go back and check that out, you probably should. Because that's where I explain the fact that they don't really want to give us anything enjoyable. That isn't really, our enjoyment isn't actually the point anymore. It's something else entirely. And this week, this Martin Luther King week, it just struck me how much and how often they want to do the race swaps and they want to do the gender swaps as part of their virtue signal about how racially conscious they are, how gender conscious they are. And it's all just garbage. They're all just trying to use entertainment that they want to sell us as a platform to demonstrate their own virtue. And all they manage to do is piss everybody off. I don't know. Maybe I'm tilting at windmills here. Maybe I'm just getting upset over nothing. I'm not all that upset anyway. I don't buy this stuff. I don't watch this garbage anymore. But the thing is, there are people that do. There are kids who are coming up who are watching this stuff. They don't have a reference to compare this to. They don't know what good entertainment is like anymore. They've been inundated with all this stuff for the last 10, 15 years. And it's going to affect society. That's the one thing that does upset me about all of this, is that these things don't exist in a vacuum. They're not innocuous. They're not harmless. They're not victimless crimes. These things are actually crimes against our society. We may not see the results of it until a few years later, when the kids who've consumed all this stuff become adults and start voting, but I guarantee you we will feel it. What do you think's going on right now? This stuff's been going on for at least a generation, and the generation that's come up is the least patriotic, least attentive, the least motivated to work, the most apt to cause problems, the most apt to complain, the most apt to put off responsibility. That came from someplace. And it wasn't necessarily just their parents. There were other actors who were involved in this, all of this, and I think Hollywood is part of the problem. So what do we do? I don't know. At least as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to make sure to starve as many of these people of my dollars and my attention as possible. So long as they're making this garbage, I'm going to put my money and attention towards things that make more sense, things that do well, things that entertain me and have good messages that I think are valuable. And if I had my druthers, I'd be behind the camera doing a little bit of that work myself. But more of that to come. I've probably harped on about this subject way too long as it is. So, this is St. John the Philosopher. Hit that like, subscribe, and share button as for more videos just like this one, as well as my reactions and as well as my video essays. I got another essay coming up, so be on the lookout for that. So, that's all for today. Goodbye. God bless, and we'll see you in another video.